Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for our 2016 webinar series. Today's webinar will focus on how to achieve rapid IVR and personalization. We are joined today by Wade Wiant, VP of Sales and Channel at Mediu, Brendan McCarthy, VP of Operations and founder of SpeechStorm, a Genesys company, and Kevin McCarthy, Manager, IF Operations and Compliance at ConnectiCare, Inc. Before we get started, I want to go through a couple housekeeping items. All the participants are muted. If you have any questions, feel free to use the right-hand lower corner of questions. Webinar is being recorded. With that recording, we will share it afterwards, as well as we're also going to share our previous webinar, the Future Contact Center of 2020. Please use the chat for questions or any issues that may come up. We'll be more than happy to address them that way. There will be 3 polling questions through the webinar. I will share the polling questions, and then it's just a checkbox for everyone to check off. And please be sure to participate in our survey afterwards. So I want to go over the quick agenda, and then I'll start to introduce our participants as well. So today, the challenges with IVR personalization, what is SpeechStorm, how personalized IVR helps ConnectiCare, and then we'll have a general summary when we're completed. With that, I'd like to introduce Wade Wiant, the VP of Sales and Channels at Mediu. Wade?
Thanks, Kevin. For those of you that are not familiar, this is the second of our Mediu education series, the second webinar out of 6 that we have planned. We're extremely excited to have you all here. And as Kevin mentioned, please feel free tomorrow to go to our website to enact a recording of this webinar to revisit some of the topics, and to also listen to our webinar for those that didn't make it in January regarding the Contact Center 2020. So as more and more contact centers add levels of sophistication to their implementations, it's becoming increasingly important to not only control the day-to-day costs of the contact center, but allow for better service and customer retention by optimizing your IVR and allowing personalization in your environment. Now, I've listed below here a few virtues in this slide, if you will, that we hear from our customers and others in the industry as they attempt to achieve the optimal strategy I've mentioned. Things like directly affecting the bottom line in tangible ways. If we could reduce the contact center costs by leveraging self-service and managing our IVR in a more efficient way, that's something that's desired. Using pre-built and consistent applications that are industry proven, and also ensuring that remaining calls that have not been deflected are handled in an efficient way. These are all things that we hear a lot from our customers, again, and from folks in and out of the industry as they try to add and retain more customers and make the customer journey one that's pleasant and one that achieves the customer's goals.
So this brings us to our first polling question. I'll bring that up and launch it for everyone. And if you could take a minute to just fill out the checkbox that fits your needs, and then we'll share the results with everyone. We're just at 50% on the votes, so we'll give it another second or two. Alrighty, I'm going to close the poll at the moment, and then we will share the results with everybody. So as you can see, it looks like the majority of the individuals on the webinar today are looking to save costs through self-service and managing the IVR themselves. That's at 60%. And then use of pre-built applications to achieve the contact center, 30%. Alrighty.
Thanks, Kevin. So the solution that we're going to focus on today will be SpeechStorm. That's a solution that helps companies achieve the personalization and optimization they need in the highly complex customer contact centers that they manage today. And they do this by leveraging IVR, speech, and mobile applications to make everyday tasks in the contact center much easier. Now I want to introduce Mr. Brendan McCarthy. who's joining us from Dublin, Ireland today, and we'll take some time to discuss the SpeechStorm solution. Brendan's the founder of SpeechStorm and is now Vice President of the SpeechStorm business unit for Genesys, who recently acquired them. Brendan?
Hi, Wade. Thanks very much for that introduction. So a bit of background about SpeechStorm. So when we founded SpeechStorm a little over 5 years ago, we did it kind of with two things in mind. One was that to make a better customer experience for your enterprise customers, but also to make it easier to deliver IVRs and self-service IVRs. And so working with our customers, what we figured out very quickly is that if you want to create a better customer experience, what you have to realize is that one size doesn't fit all. And by what we mean by one size doesn't fit all is a huge amount of the calls coming into your contact center on a daily basis are entirely predictable. So if you send out a recent bill to a customer, they may be ringing in to pay that. If they have just got a recent statement and they may have a query on their balance. So you can start to say, well, if one size doesn't fit all, then how do we start to personalize? So the way we look at personalization within SpeechStorm is what we call the 4 C's. If you can just advance it there. So the key for us when we look at personalization is the 4 C's, and the 4 C's really are around customer, context, capacity, and control. And what that means is using information you have about your customer, the context of their call, the capacity of the contact center to determine which options present, and more importantly is putting you in control of that experience and in the hands of the business. So how does that help an enterprise? So one of the enterprises that we've worked with was Air, or is it now Aircom as it was previously, who would be a quad play telco provider. So they provide fixed line, broadband, mobile, and TV services to customers of all shapes and sizes. So they would bring large enterprises, international corporates, and right down to teenagers on prepay sale contracts. So one of the things that they wanted to achieve when working with them was to increase the customer experience because it was becoming an issue for them. And what they did is they said, well, we have a lot of context around our customers and we understand what they can deliver to us. So how are we going to use that context to give a better customer experience? So working with them, we did a couple of very simple things. We made a couple of decisions that they would only ever present 3 or 4 options in the IVR menu, and that even with those options, those menus would only be about 2 deep. So 2 deep before they got to a self-serve piece or to an appropriate agent queue. So working through that, what we came up with was the matrix you see on screen now, and said, so these are the type of options that our customers face, but these are the type of customers and the status and the experience we want to create. So we look here in the bottom boxes. If you look at a customer type, so we have a customer who has a broadband and mobile, but they have an open order. So the experience we're going to create is we're going to give them a proactive update of where their order status is. What that does to them is it allows them to change the customer experience, because one, now it's not just a number to the person dialing it. It says it recognizes that they understand I have a relationship. And even if that isn't the case and it's not about the update, they've still got a piece of information. And part of the reason why doing that is as a community of users, we have now become much more transactional in how we actually engage. I myself personally, if I want to get some information, if I want to get my account balance, I don't really mind whether I get it from a machine or a person. I want to complete that transaction. And that's one of the things we mentioned, we recognized. But once I've done that, what I also want to do is I want to have the most relevant options presented to me. And so by having that and using personalization, the 4 C's, as I said, we were able to reduce the complexity. Aligned and married with that was the approach we had taken to creating a SpeechStorm as it was, which is to saying, a lot of the interactions we have are transactional. So how I identify a customer, whether it be in retail, financial services, healthcare, is very similar, if not the same. How I capture a credit card payment, which is one of the challenges we see on a daily basis. How do I make successful credit card payments? Again, it's the same process. And to do that, and to allow our customers gain early realization of benefits, we created over 80 pre-built application templates that can be dragged and dropped within the Genesys SpeechStorm environment. So what has that meant for our customers who have worked with us in the past? What we have seen is the increase in, if you just move on to the next slide, please, Wade. The business benefits that we've created. We've seen, in a lot of cases, an increase in self-service. So, for example, the customer I've just been talking about, Aircom, increased the self-service rates by 100% over the 12-month period since going live. And that was done, as I just highlighted, by personalizing the experience and offering the self-service options that were most appropriate to the caller. So that was the customer in context. With another cable provider, their project to replace their current IVR applications using a standard approach was estimated to take 11 months. Using the SpeechStorm pre-built applications, the project was delivered from requirements sign-off to go live in just 10 weeks, meaning the benefits were really realized that much earlier. And during the subsequent 2 years, through refining the call flows and the questions and the prompts, that same customer increased the level of call deflection by a factor of 8. So they were increasing the level of self-service and deflection. The way they did it was they moved the ID&V from a 45% effectiveness up to 93%, which meant that double the level of people were now able to go through and get to the next stage of the most common requested interaction, which was a balance inquiry. So over the next 2 years, to put it into real terms, we allowed, of the 19 million calls, we increased that to being 93% were able to get the balance, which was the 19 million calls for balance on an annual basis. So that's where we moved the call deflection in that one area much higher, but across all the other pieces that we had the interaction. And then what we've also seen is that in the subsequent maintenance of the IVR, it's 70% less effort, because you're no longer having to rebuild your IVR applications, but you're now looking at using the user interface to deliver a better customer experience through the inbuilt analytics and reporting. Maybe you can just move on to the next slide. And so what we see is the real benefits of personalization. And the case study that we did ourselves with Ovum, in the 12 months since we went live, after we went live with the IVR, and this is the change in using the 4 C's around the personalization. Not only did the level of self-service double, but most surprisingly, the Net Promoter Score went from a low of 5.6 to 6.3, nearly in tandem with the ease of use of the IVR and the increase in self-service. So our benefits that we delivered there to Aircom was dual, in that not only did we deliver a much higher level of self-service, but we also delivered a much better customer experience in a much shorter period of time frame. So that's how SpeechStorm has been able to help enterprises globally change the way the IVR becomes not just a measure of self-service, but more around personalization and how you can use personalization and the 4 C's to increase the overall effectiveness of the IVR.
Thanks, Brendan.
So that moves us to the next polling question. We'll launch the poll and give everybody a couple minutes to fill out the questions. We've got about 53% voted so far, so we'll close it here in about 10 seconds. Excellent. We thank everybody for voting. Let me share the results with everyone. And this is what we're seeing throughout the industry. It is very important, or extremely important, I apologize, to personalize the contact center for your organizations. It's much more personalized to your customers. So, alrighty, with that, we will move on to the next slides. And then we'll get you Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. Now I want to turn your attention to a Mediu customer that has implemented SpeechStorm and realized its benefits. Kevin McCarthy is a manager of IS operations and compliance at ConnectiCare. Kevin is going to take us through the details of how they achieve positive benefits from implementing Genesys SpeechStorm with the Mediu Expert Services team. Kevin?
Thanks for the introduction, Kevin. Good afternoon. Before we go forward, just a little bit about ConnectiCare. ConnectiCare is a health insurance company in the state of Connecticut. We were founded in 1981. We have a provider network of almost 900,000 doctors and practitioners, which is a national network. We insure over 300,000 members, primarily in the state of Connecticut, but we do have some membership in Massachusetts and in New York. This is all accomplished through several lines of business. Traditionally, health insurance companies distributed insurance through large employers and small employer groups. That paradigm has really shifted over the last 3 years. With the introduction of Obamacare in the individual marketplace, we find that most of our business is coming from marketing to directly to individuals. We also have a Medicare line of business that is growing at a constant rate. Could you go to the next slide, please? The challenge for ConnectiCare was that our call center technology that we had employed and was using on a regular basis was really getting rather old and obsolete. We did have IVR capabilities, but it was such that we couldn't adequately expand it to meet the future demands and needs of the company. We also noticed that we've experienced close to a 300% growth in call volume over the last few years, primarily because we've grown in terms of our membership, but also because of the nature of the business that we find ourselves gravitating towards. Less large and small groups and more individual marketplace. And as I had mentioned, the marketplace has changed away from selling to employer groups and more to individuals, and that we lack the ability to service the member. And this is really an emerging marketplace for us. One of the major capabilities that we find that our individual users were looking for was the ability to check on the balance of their accounts and to make payments through an IVR. And that really kind of drove where we needed to go. Next slide, please. After conducting a vendor search and product evaluations, ConnectiCare selected Genesys and SpeechStorm through our interaction with Mediu. Based upon our business requirements, Mediu and SpeechStorm were able to customize the pre-built SpeechStorm payment application to fit our needs and requirements. It was required and it was able to interface with our bank, which was the Bank of America, via API calls. It was able to directly interface to our own custom databases that we use within our systems and applications. And we were able to develop the needed functionality like making payments and checking for account balances for our members. All of this was done in a secure PCI compliant way ConnectiCare employees don't handle member credit card numbers, nor is this data retained on any of our systems. So from that perspective, it's inherently secure. And the development for us took approximately 4 months, probably longer than what you heard before, but a lot of that time was due to the fact that this was done in conjunction with a web-based functionality to do balance inquiries and payments. And there was a lot of coordination that had to take place between the Bank of America, Mediu, SpeechStorm, and own internal developers to develop the needed capability. The results, the billing IVR application went live in September of last year. Since going live, we've noticed that the adoption rate by our members has more than doubled. Today, the application handles about 1,000 balance inquiries a month and handles probably over 5,000 payments a month. During our open enrollment season, which runs from December into early March, we didn't need to add any additional seasonal billing customer service reps. And in years past, that has translated into anywhere from 4 to 10 temporary employees. What's also notable about that is that this past open enrollment season, we saw the highest increase in membership and we had the most activity that we've seen. Ongoing, we think that it's probably reduced our staff in the billing call center area by 2 FTEs. And that translates into about $120,000 annually in savings. We did, as part of the implementation, receive training from SpeechStorm. And one of the notable advantages of that was our telephony engineer who was involved in the training has since been able to make some simple menu option changes without going back to the vendor and involving them for support on the product, which is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to have some level of self-sufficiency once we were live on the product.
Thanks, Kevin. That story truly illustrates the business value that SpeechStorm delivers. And that brings us really to our final polling question for today's session. Kevin?
So we'll take a little time. The poll should be up for everyone to answer the questions. And we're currently at about 21%. We'll give this a little bit more time. And we'll be closing the poll in about 5 seconds. Great, thank you. We appreciate everyone taking their time. Share some of the results. Looks like 67% plan within the next year to add personalization solutions to your infrastructure. So once again, we want to thank everybody for taking the polls, and we will move on to the final couple of slides here.
Thanks, Kevin. So what did we learn today? In summary, your personalization leverages what's known about a customer to allow for a better call experience. And customers are more likely to utilize self-service when the experience is personalized. I think a lot of that data proves out by Kevin McCarthy and ConnectiCare's data about, I believe it was doubling in size in terms of self-use. And a customer's utilization of self-service can be tied to a higher ease of use and potentially a higher NPS score. So that concludes the presentation for today. And what we're going to do now is pivot over to a question and answer session. We'll field a few questions. And Kevin, if you want to direct everybody in terms of how to do that, and then start to give a couple of the questions. We'll have Brendan and Kevin stick around here to field a couple of those.
Sure. Great. Well, the first question we have is for Brendan at SpeechStorm. Brendan, the question is, how long is a typical engagement take to get launched with the product?
Look, that's a great question. I think that there's no such thing as a typical engagement because our customers range in size. But by way of kind of reference, the project we did with Air, which was a telco provider, as you saw, with four different kind of options and 3 different brands, we completed from start to finish, or to hand over to the customer in 14 weeks, and we did another European telco from our first engagement to handing over to them for UAT in 12 weeks. So we generally look at 10 to 14 weeks as the kind of core piece around it.
Excellent, thank you. The next question we have is for Kevin McCarthy. Kevin, the question is from one of our participants is, you said it took about 4 months to get the from start to finish. Did that also include testing time, or did you build in some testing time on top of that 4 months before you went live?
No, that included testing time. We went through a complete regression test with the application and bringing in people from our call center to make test calls and to follow up on results. It also included going back to our own internal systems. Part of the deployment from our perspective was ensuring that information that was transcribed on the billing IVR be reflected in our CSR product that the desktop call center agents have access to. In other words, if we got a call back in a matter of a few minutes after somebody made a payment on the system, not being sure if it went, we wanted to make sure that that agent knew that that member had called in, that they had done the transaction, and they could speak to it. So there's quite a bit of integration work that we did with our own internal systems.
Good. So I do have another question for you, Brendan. It's actually a two-part question from the side. The one question is there anything in development that you could share with us going forward? And they also tied into that, what would be the ideal customer profile for a SpeechStorm implementation?
I think one of the things that from a Genesys point of view is how SpeechStorm, because of personalization and because of understanding context, etc., really enables the omni-channel and how you can start to create that kind of seamless experience across channels. And I think that's exactly where kind of from a Genesys point of view, that's one of the big things that SpeechStorm will enable to be delivered in a much simpler and more rapid fashion. And then the second part, I think the ideal customer for us is someone who really wants to create a different experience. So, when we start talking to a customer and they're talking about the customer experience rather than technology, that's someone who really gets it. It really does allow our customers to change how they engage. And when you get the customer experience right, as we've seen from it, is a lot of the other business benefits automatically flow, like increased levels of self-service, higher levels of customer satisfaction, higher levels of call deflection, all those kind of things start to flow. But it's about getting the right customer experience, leveraging the 4 Cs, and then driving that to kind of really allow you as a business to change the way the IVR is from being something that kind of sat in the corner and was difficult to being a core business tool. That's where we really see the benefits. Excellent,
thank you. So we just want to stay within our 30-minute time frame. I'll pull out the other questions and try to get them answered for the participants and send them in. So a little bit about Mediu, Wade, and then wrap it up.
Thanks, Kevin. Real quickly, for those that didn't join us in the last webinar in January, just a few bullet points about who we are at Mediu. We're a consulting services firm based in Columbus, Ohio, in the Columbus, Ohio area. We've got more than 20 successful years in the customer contact space, and of that, we've logged over 500,000 consulting hours in over 150 call centers in North America. We pride ourselves in delivering bottom line direct impact with solutions like Genesys SpeechStorm to customers like ConnectiCare and others. And it's good to know that, also to point out that we are one of the few Genesys partners out there that are trained and experienced in SpeechStorm, and we follow SpeechStorm's rapid value delivery method. A couple of ways, or numerous ways to get a hold of us. Ali Condren is our main contact for those that want to reach out and have additional questions or would like to talk specifically about Genesys, SpeechStorm, or any of the other solutions that that we specialize in. And you can find us on all the major social media outlets. And I'd like to wrap up by saying stay tuned. We have more to come. On June 28th, 2016, will be the third installment of the Mediu Education Series. And we're going to be featuring our partner centricity and the voice of the customer. So we look forward to that. And with that, I will wrap up. And I do, again, appreciate everyone's time and look for the first invite for the June 28th Education Series webinar coming to your inboxes soon. Thanks again, everybody.